Welcome back to another Good Eye podcast. My name's Jay Smack, and here we talk about good stuff, mostly good stuff. Could be curious stuff, could be learning stuff, could be healthy stuff. Well, the name of the podcast is not stuff, it's Good Eye Podcast, so maybe I'm using that word too much, but it's essentially be well, do good, learn stuff is one of the mottos around here. And today my guest is Lisa Smith. She is a master hypnotherapist and mindset coach. She teaches resilience as a superpower to individuals, to corporate teams, to salespeople, helping people bounce back from adversity more quickly or easily and bring mental fitness in their journey to happiness. It's pretty fascinating what Lisa brings to the table. It's a number of different things, including hypnotherapy, of course. She practices something called, and we'll get into this, needleless acupuncture. Also, another practice called neurolinguistic programming, how to reset your mindset. We get into all of that stuff and go off on a few tangents as well, as I am known to do. So I want to thank Lisa for her time and attention today. And here it is, my conversation with Lisa Smith, Resilience as a Superpower, on today's Good Eye Podcast. All right, and welcome to another edition of the Good Eye Podcast. My name's Jay Smack, and Lisa Smith is with me today. And as we were chatting about offline before we got started, I really kind of don't know where to begin, Lisa. You are doing so many things, but as I also mentioned, I totally get that this is all under the umbrella of mindset and general wellness and really positivity. You bring a lot of positivity to your numerous practices. You are also a practitioner of hypnotherapy, which I want to ask you about. But the greater heading that you provided me is resilience as a superpower. I like that. I'm not sure how to get there. I think that's everybody's challenge, and that's where you come in, and you come at it from a number of different angles. But how do you define resilience? And I know it's more than just snap back and tomorrow's another day and this too shall pass. So maybe take us through how you define resilience first, and then we'll get into how mindset affects that, which I'm sure you'll touch on as well.
Right, exactly. So first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I'm really excited to share with you and your listeners today about these tools and how they can start to use them. Because ultimately, I'm not about giving a person a fish. I'm about teaching them how to fish. So teaching them how their minds work and how they can utilize these neuroscience-based techniques that I use with them on their own. So in terms of resilience, how I define it is the ability to rebound or bounce back more quickly and more easily from setbacks, disappointments, challenges, and conflict. So that's sort of the simple definition. And if you can think about it, I teach about mental fitness and building your mental fitness muscle, just like you would build a physical muscle. So if your physical muscles are weak and you're suddenly trying to run up a hill, and your body isn't conditioned for that, it's going to be challenging for you. If you are not, your muscles aren't built up and you're trying to lift a 50-pound weight, it's going to be more challenging than somebody who has been working their muscles, and a 50-pound weight for them is like nothing, right? So it's the same thing with us and life situations. There are some things that are 20-pound weights and you're good at handling 20-pound weights. And there are some life circumstances that are more like 200-pound weights. And if you haven't built up strong resiliency, then that 200-pound weight is going to take you down to the mat, right? And it's going to be harder for you to try to get back up from that. Or again, somebody who a 200-pound weight is not a huge deal for them. They're going to be able to handle that, not get taken down to the mat, or they're going to be able to take it and be able to lift it off of themselves much more quickly and easily. So that's kind of a metaphor between the physical and the mental muscle and your resilience.
Um, how do you go about when you have a new client? How do you go about finding which muscles need to be built up? Because sometimes it's a number of different things, whether it's lack of confidence, imposter syndrome, trauma, um,
Right.
depression. Where do you start zeroing in, and what techniques do you use to figure out what it is people need to build up as far as their emotional and psychological muscle?
Well, I really just start with questions. And so when somebody's interested in working with me, I do a free consultation, and there's a questionnaire that they complete beforehand that helps them to better clarify what their challenges are, what they want instead, where they feel like they're getting blocked from doing that on their own. And then there's a variety of assessments that I have clients take: limiting beliefs assessments, or saboteur assessments when I'm working with the positive intelligence work, and finding what people's uh, top innate saboteurs are. So, and there's a couple of other things, assessments or questions that I'll guide people through that will give me some of that initial information on what are some of the common blocks or issues that are playing into the challenges that they're having. And then some of it's just experimentation based on what their challenges are, what their goals are, what the assessments show in terms of what techniques I might utilize with them, and what I might start off with and continue in with. So, uh, and a lot of that's based on what happens when I start working with a client, right? What shows up, how are they responding to different things? And I might stay on the path I'm on. I might veer off to another path if they're not getting quite the right results so far. And, we go in a different direction. That's why I've studied so many different things, because, if you only have a hammer, everything, looks like a
Looks
nail,
like a
but not
nail,
everything's a
right?
nail, right? So I like to have a variety of tools in my toolbox to use with them, and then to teach them, because sometimes also when I'm teaching clients how to use these different techniques, some they respond well to, and others not so much, where somebody else might respond to something that they didn't respond as well to. So it's kind of like um, we start off with a basic recipe, and then we just see how the recipe is turning out, and we change the ingredients and the techniques as we go along.
Makes perfect sense. And my question almost was a little unfair as I'm looking at my notes, because there are issues that you help people with that are not just, say, metaphysical, emotional, psychological. And I'm looking at your website. Things like
Mhm.
weight loss, health issues, smoking, sleep issues, cancer, that you can help with all of that from a mindset perspective. Talk a little bit
Right.
about how important mindset is, and this is really at the root of resilience, how important that is dealing with just about anything that comes our way. And even that seems a little bit simplistic, but as an avid meditator, I find that just being able to observe emotions, you still get mad, you still get angry, you still have these issues, but being able to observe them and see them in action sort of
Right.
robs them of its power. So just
Right.
maybe talk about mindset when it comes to even dealing with physical things, environmental things, not just emotional.
Right. Well, so the some of the basis of what I work off of is what I call the TEAR formula, TEAR. And we actually look at the formula backwards. So the R stands for results. So the results that we're getting in our life. If the results that we're getting in our life are not what we want, or they're not making us happy, then we have to look at what's leading to those results. And that's the A. So it's the actions. Whatever actions we're taking are influencing the outcomes we're getting, the results. And so most people get that. And the definition of insanity, we all know that by now, right? doing the same thing the same way, expecting to get a different result. So we know we have to change our action if we want to change our results. But this is where people get stuck, because most of the time they're relying upon their same old programs that created the problem in the first place, and their actions, their habits, or their conditioned responses, or they're relying on willpower, the conscious mind, force of will to try to change the way they're thinking, and then the ways that they're acting. But people get stuck because willpower, first of all, is not designed for the long term. Willpower is designed for short bursts. And so if you want long-term change, you can't rely upon willpower. It doesn't last. Plus, willpower is only about 10% of the energy that is driving the forces of our actions. The other 90% is our subconscious mind, our inner thoughts and inner programs. And that's the domain of where our thoughts are, where our emotions are. So going to the T and the E of the formulas, our actions are influenced by our emotional state at the time we take the action, and the thought processes we're having in that moment about the actions we're thinking about taking. So what I really help with, and through these tools, is to better guide, direct, and influence the thought and the emotional state. So teach people how to have more of that inner awareness, like you were talking about, Jay. That's what we call metacognition, the ability to be aware in the moment of your thoughts and actually disassociate from your thoughts and recognize you are not your thoughts, you are having thoughts. And be the observer of your thoughts, which allows enough of a space or a pause to assess how you're thinking in that moment. And is this true? And I absolutely know it's true. Is this helpful for me? How do I respond when I think those thoughts, etc.? That's a little bit of Byron Katie's work. And so being able to identify and become aware of your thoughts and be more directive of them, as well as learning how to have self-command over your emotions, your emotional states, and learning how to shift into a more productive emotional state. So that, combined with more productive thoughts, naturally produce better actions, which naturally produce better outcomes.
Really, really cool stuff. I love that. Observing the emotions, and you're not necessarily controlling them, but you're aware of their processes. And I'm not familiar with, you mentioned Katie?
Byron Katie.
Byron Katie. It reminds me a little bit of William James and the Stoics a bit, in that you are and this is my take on this, not trying to reinterpret what you're saying, but that the emotion is going to be there, much like the appearance of, might be going down a rabbit hole here, the self in consciousness. Like anything that you are perceiving is appearing on the screen of consciousness. And are you able to observe the process of the emotion? And you were going to say something, so let me let you get to it before I jump to my next point. Were you just going to say something there?
Yeah. So there are ways that I teach people how they can have more control over their emotions, how to stop being the victim of their emotions. Most people who are in jail were a victim of their emotions. So different techniques that I use, such as EFT, emotional freedom techniques, needleless acupuncture. It's acupressure stimulation of particular points on the body, the head, the face, the hands, that actually physically shift the activation centers of the brain, because emotions are just chemical reactions in the brain. And the negative emotions are derived and produced from the hindbrain and that fight or flight center of the brain, that stress center. So what we call the negative emotions, or the lower energy emotions, like fear, anger, resentment, frustration, sadness, etc., those are generated by the amygdala, the fight or flight center, the primitive brain. Whereas the positive emotional states are produced by the prefrontal cortex area of the brain, which is behind the forehead. This is the higher rational area of the human brain. And that is able to produce happiness, joy, positive responses, creativity, rationality. All of that is from the generation of the prefrontal cortex. And what techniques like EFT do is it actually physically shifts which areas of the brain are being activated. So if you're in that negative emotional state and the primitive brain is in charge, doing the stimulation of these particular acupressure points, also oftentimes combined with some positive phrasing, helps to shift and get the prefrontal cortex area activated and producing more of those positive emotional states. And it actually helps to dissipate negative emotions. So it's not like we're denying the negative emotion or we're stuffing it. In fact, when we're doing EFT, we're claiming the negative emotion that we're having in that moment. Even though I'm feeling this anger about whatever, I fully and completely forgive, love, and accept myself. And through that combination of the identifying the negative, but following it up with some positive self-directed affirmations and stimulating those points, what you're actually doing is releasing the emotion, sort of like when you're rubbing a stain, you're breaking up the bonds of that stain, because emotions are just energy and it's tightly bound. And when you do the tapping and the stimulation of those points, it's like rubbing that piece of material or forcing water through it. It starts to loosen up those bonds where it begins to, all the tiny molecules start to dissipate away. And that's what's happening with the emotions. Instead of the stuck emotional state, we start to break it up, dissipate it, and then it just dissolves. We're not denying it. We're not pushing it, to underneath. We're actually allowing it to complete itself and allowing it to release, which is what happens when we're like punching a pillow or a punching bag, or we're going for a run or whatever. When we're having those negative emotions, that we notice afterwards, there's this sense of just having released it, let it go.
Another reason why exercise is so beneficial. How I always feel so much better after a nice, challenging bike ride than sitting at the desk for another hour.
Yeah, because you're actually releasing the adrenaline, the catecholamines, all that stuff physically from you, as well as dissipating it mentally.
Really well put. And I'm glad you cleared that up, because I think what I was trying to say was that you don't become emotionless, even though your emotions are not controlling you, because they're in the light. You're aware of them. Mm-hmm. That's really fascinating. And the Eastern, the Buddhist approach would be to nurture your sadness, nurture your fear, like you said, breaking it up. I love that analogy of the stain, breaking up the bonds in the stain. You nurture it, take care of it, almost appreciate it, and it sort of robs it from its malicious power, if you will.
Yeah.
But what I was heading toward is, I'm curious, based on the number of practices you do, including the needleless acupuncture, neurolinguistic programming, which I want to get to, hypnotherapy. Is there an order when you're working with someone? Do you find that perhaps neurolinguistic programming is necessary before hypnotherapy? Is there anything like that you consider?
No, there's no specific order that I'm doing things. Mm-hmm. Usually when I start with somebody, I'm going to do a hypnosis process for their first session to start getting the unconscious, some new programming, some new information, and trying to, exchange that out for the old information. And it's a pretty passive thing, and most people respond well to it and find it enjoyable and relaxing. There's other benefits when you go into the hypnotic state. It naturally increases endorphins, decreases stress, improves the immune system, etc. So, whenever people are open to it, then I like to do the hypnosis with them. And then I like to teach them the EFT. So I'm teaching them right away how to start to have emotional control. And now in terms of the NLP, the neurolinguistic programming, can be used on its own. It's basically, NLP stands for neurolinguistic programming, which is the language of the mind. And so what we've discovered is that the brain has certain ways that it processes information. It codes, stores, recalls, responds to information, in particular, predictable patterns. And so we use this understanding of those patterns and how that brain is coding things and responding. And we teach people how to take more control over that. And so you can do NLP techniques, which are like mental exercises to change the way that you're perceiving things and responding to things. Of a brief example, very simplistic example of an NLP technique is standing in front of a group of people talking, feeling nervous. Imagine them all in their underwear. It just introduces in a non-threatening visual that oftentimes allows people to feel less threatened. Or imagine them all wearing Bozo the Clown noses, or imagine them all like kindergartners. Okay. So that's like, and there's visual. So NLP is tied into our senses. So there's visual, mental exercises you could do, hearing your favorite song in your head, or a song that makes you feel confident, or sound that makes you feel confident. Physicality, your physiology affects your psychology and vice versa. So going into say like a power stance, like, Superman or Wonder Woman with legs spread apart and hands on the hips and shoulders back, and imagine a cape flowing behind you, etc. The power pose. So we see that our physiology does affect our psychology. So shifting your body in a particular way to get into the physiology that matches how you want to be feeling. So those are all examples of NLP techniques. But what I typically do with NLP is I use it in conjunction with the hypnosis. So when I have somebody in the hypnotic state, a lot of what I do oftentimes is utilize an NLP mental exercise, guide the client through that, and they're getting even better response because they're in the more receptive trance state of hypnosis while they're doing the technique.
Trance state. I was going to ask you to describe for us an authentic hypnotherapy experience versus the popular image of you're getting very sleepy, because I think we all know that that's not really what's going on, and that people are awake and aware, but that they have to be, again, back to this word, in the right mindset. Somebody who doesn't believe hypnotherapy will work on them, is it correct that it will in fact not work? How does that work, and what is the experience like?
Yeah. That's actually a misnomer, because I've talked to so many people that they said, oh, I went to the, that hypnotist stage thing, and, I didn't believe in that. Or I went with my friend to the group, stop smoking thing, and, I didn't believe it. And I wasn't considering quitting. And yet lo and behold, they responded, they got hypnotized. So even though there was a part of them didn't believe it, hadn't intended for it, they were still, part of them was receptive to and responded to the techniques that the hypnotists use. And there had to have been some part of them that was open and willing to it, even though consciously they weren't aware of that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have responded. You can't force somebody into a state of hypnosis, or in the state of hypnosis, you can't force them to do anything like take their clothes off, or,
right,
whatever. It just it kind of lowers inhibitions and makes you more receptive and open to ideas or doing certain things. But you can't make somebody do something that's against their values, their
Mm-hmm.
deeply held values, or their sense of safety and security.
And I would imagine if somebody is putting themselves in that situation, if they go to a stop smoking seminar where they use hypnotherapy, or if they come to you under any circumstances, they're already part of the way down that road towards believing or being in that mindset, whether they realize it or not. This is a last
Exactly.
ditch effort. I'm going to give it a
Yeah.
shot. Won't work on me, but they're already halfway there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. Um, Now, tell me if I'm pronouncing this right. The Lefko belief elimination process.
Yes, very good.
That sounded fascinating. And because I'm really curious about people who have been, for lack of a better word, indoctrinated at some point in their lives. Now, I don't mean in a negative sense, but they grew up believing something, whether it's, the Easter Bunny is real or the world is flat, whatever it happens to be.
Or I'm
How
not good enough, or I'm stupid, or
exactly? And that's the more realistic examples where I was kind of heading. Talk about belief systems and how you try to break people, change, again, back to mindset, try to break people out of a mindset that is keeping them back based on a belief system. Because I would think that's kind of a slippery slope, are not putting yourself in a position of judgment. Because again, you mentioned value system. If it's part of their value system and you're being perceived in a position of judgment, I would imagine that would undermine it. But can you talk about that a little bit?
sure. So beliefs are really, really powerful, and they're a huge part of our programming and what's influencing us, what's influencing our conscious and unconscious thoughts and our behaviors. So uh, what I've come to believe and see through my work doing this for 25 plus years is that 90% of our thoughts are our beliefs. I can't do this. This is too hard. I'm not good enough. I'll never amount to anything. If I do this, I'll be rejected. People won't like me. I won't fit in. All these different, money is bad in some way. If I have money, people will try to take it away from me. Uh, I'm destined to be fat because everybody in my family, all these different. I mean, I've got this huge list of limiting beliefs that are a part of a limiting beliefs assessment that I have clients do. So we can identify what they are, like what are those limiting beliefs that are operating. I'm not good enough, I'm not important, and mistakes and failure are bad are the top 3 limiting beliefs of the majority of people. Unless they've done the belief work with me, like the Lefko belief elimination process can clear a long held belief like I'm not good enough in 30 to 40 minutes and have it gone forever.
How about coming at it from the other side? I had faith my whole life that everything would turn out all right. This too shall pass. The sun will come up tomorrow. And then suddenly you lose a family member to cancer, or someone passes away or goes to jail. And you're like, everything I knew is gone. I have faith in nothing. Do you come at it from that direction as well?
Sometimes. And first of all, there's sort of an element of extremism in that, like and unrealistic expectations that, I mean, you can't go through life without pain, without loss, without this, something not working out the way that you wanted to. Totally unrealistic to believe that. So it's, if people have unrealistic expectations, then they're just setting themselves up for having the fall. And again, not having that resilience to recognize, bad things happen to even to good people. And that there's a lot we don't have control over in this world, but not caging yourself up and not, causing yourself to go to an extreme of, well, obviously there is no God because, this happened. Again, with resilience, it's a matter of understanding that, you know, the unexpected or the unwanted does happen, but then it's a matter of how you respond to that, because that's the only thing we have really control over. There's three things we have control over. What we focus on and give energy to, the meaning that we give to events, and our response to events and situations. Only three things we have total control over, right? Everything else is, you know, up for grabs. But being able to recognize, again, the meaning that we're giving, where we're putting our focus, right? Are we putting our focus on what we lost or what we still have? Are we putting and what's the meaning that we're giving to the situation? This means my life is over, I'll never be happy again. Or this just means that there's something that went different than I anticipated, and I need to shift. I need to look at this differently. What's a new meaning? This is actually a technique that's a little piece of the left go belief elimination process, which he calls the occurring process, 5 steps to shift the negative meaning of any event that you've given, to shift the way that you feel about it. So like if it's raining out, is the rain right or wrong or good or bad? It's neither. It's just rain, but it's the meaning we're giving to it and the interpretation, through our own filters. So like, hey, I'm planning a outdoor wedding. This means my day is ruined or my marriage is doomed, versus a farmer in a drought looking at that same rain. He's jumping up and down. He's happy and yay, this means my crops are safe. So again, changing the meaning that we're choosing to give to something allows us to be able to respond in a more favorable way to it.
That's a great example. And I love that you brought up the weather. One of my favorite sayings is something my grandfather used to say, and he was an old Scandinavian Stoic himself. And he said, the weather should be praised or ignored. And I love that.
Yeah.
And correct me if this is in any way incorrect. I saw on your website you are an ordained minister of spiritual healing. What is that process like? How do you become that?
It was a one-day training, an event that I did with a friend of mine who had the authority to do the training and give the ordinations. And I basically did it as kind of like a protection mechanism. So if you're ordained minister, then you are legally protected if you touch your clients.
Oh, okay.
Because there are some times where in doing the hypnosis, we do what's called physical anchoring, where I might touch the back of somebody's hand. Now, I always tell them beforehand, I might do that, and do I have permission to do that? So if I know I might be using the physical anchoring, I always ahead of time ask permission and let them know that might happen. But it's touch the back of their hand or touch their forehead when I'm giving a particular suggestion. And that helps to create an association in the brain between the suggestion and the touch. So anytime they do the touch, they feel the touch. Or we can do it with, verbal. I say this particular word, it's associated with, feeling happy or whatever. Then the brain kind of ties those two together and responds to it.
Interesting.
So that's basically why I got the ordination. Just it gives me a little bit of extra protection in working with my clients for being able to do, some of that type of physical touch anchoring.
Pulling back and getting a little bit more general, all of what we've been talking about and a lot of what you practice is under the general umbrella. Again, I'm using that analogy, umbrella of wellness and spiritual wellness and health. Are there other practices or realms that you are curious about? Specifically, I'm thinking about, you've mentioned energy a number of times, and I'm a big believer in energy. And of course, it's never created nor destroyed. It just takes different forms, and it's up to us to make sure it's flowing down the riverbanks of energy in the right direction. Such as the energy of, say, a loved one that maybe has passed or is somewhere else in the world, but you feel their energy. I'm basically asking you if there's other realms that you're curious about that you may not offer because it's all energy and it's all one thing, and meditation, yoga, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's some other things I've dove into relative to energy and quantum physics.
Oh, now we're talking. Yeah.
Because everything is energy and everything has a frequency. And so I actually have a frequency healing device called the Healy, which I utilize to help to balance my frequencies. So in 6 levels: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, my energetic body, and my ethereal body. So there's a lot of really cool science behind it, based on Tesla and Bone and Einstein, and some really super super smart people that that I love utilizing and getting into. But and then there's other things like Reiki and hands-on healing and body talk and other things. And again, that's all in the realm because everything's energy, and there's different ways to harness that energy, transform that energy, and different things tend to work better for different people. I've never really felt anything noticeable from receiving Reiki, but I know a lot of people have. So for me, Reiki just isn't, for one reason or another, as an effective tool as I've found some of these other things that I use. And one of the things I tell prospects or clients is that every technique that I use with them are all techniques that I first used for me. So I experimented with these different techniques. Hypnosis was the first one, reading a book on self-hypnosis in high school. That's kind of what started my journey with that. And over the years, got interested and heard about some other techniques like the NLP, et cetera. And so anything that I tried that seemed to have a good positive impact for me and was used fairly simply, I got training in so I could be able to teach other people how to use it or help other people benefit from it. So I don't do Reiki and teach Reiki because I experienced Reiki from numerous people and it didn't seem to have an impact for me. So I didn't go down that road. Everything that I use right now are all things that I've found really great benefit from.
That's cool. And I love that you try everything first, of course, before recommending it or bringing it to the surface with a client. Right. And of course, you mentioned I sort of straddle the worlds when it comes, because I'm a bit of a skeptic, but I want this. I want so many of these practices to work. I really want them to work. That's why meditation really resonates with me. And
now there's so much science behind meditation.
Oh yeah,
don't realize it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's woo woo and just om, cross your legs and put your fingers together and go om. It's there's so many ways to meditate too, and again, different techniques work better for different people. Walking meditation in nature just gets you that zoned out, that present. So like resilience is also about learning how to be more in the present, not going back to the past and rehashing the past and pulling up negative feelings, not negatively projecting into the future, but just being in the present, aware, and what's here right now and what's real.
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about, time is absolutely relative. And you started hinting at the quantum mechanics thing, which I also find fascinating, how to bend your own reality with intention, to align with a number of different realities that might be going on at the same time. But when you talk about time being relative, everybody can relate to, oh my gosh, that hour went by like it was a second. Where did the time go? And yet when you're doing something you hate, it drags. And if that's not relativity, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's exactly. So it's all perception.
And, as an audio guy too, the frequency thing has always really spoken to me. Finding where your body resonates and what frequency you're vibrating at in alignment with the universe. It's science.
Yeah. And and there's studies showing that frequency has an impact on cancer and tumors, and actually, exploding the cells. And there's a really cool YouTube video with that. So if somebody looks up, it's a TED Talk on YouTube about frequency and cancer.
I'm writing this down.
It was in the past couple of years.
Yeah, that actually rings a bell. And I'm going to look into Healy because it reminds me of something else, and it could be completely different. But are you familiar with the amp coil?
I haven't heard of that one.
It's another thing that has to do with electricity and frequencies vibrating. And I say as a sound guy because the middle C is a frequency of 44.1, I believe. So in any direction, that's all music is, and sound is frequencies. Well, not all it is. Obviously, it ties into the emotional component, but I find it all fascinating, especially coupled with science. But
yeah.
Well, this has absolutely been fascinating. I always like to open it up as we're starting to draw to a close in case there's anything that I haven't asked you or anything you've got going on or anything you want to bring up before we start to wrap it up and let you go.
I think maybe the one other thing that I've recently been trained in, and that is really forming the foundational principles for the majority of clients that I work with, unless it's something like quitting smoking or some kind of quick behavior change, is the positive intelligence work, which is where the mental fitness comes in. So your PQ, your positive intelligence quotient, is based on the percentage of time that you're operating more from the prefrontal cortex area of your brain, what we call the sage brain, and the sage way of looking at things and responding to things with like love, curiosity, innovation, etc., versus the percentage of times that you're responding negatively from the primitive brain and the saboteur ways of thinking and responding to things. So the positive intelligence work is really great. And a lot of more right brain types of people and a lot of my more like my male clients tend to resonate better with that versus things like the EFT, which feel a little bit more woo-woo. But we teach PQ reps, which are 10-second mindfulness-based exercises, again, tied into any of your senses, where just for 10 seconds at a time, you become totally focused without a state of judgment or putting meaning or anything on it, just totally aware of rubbing your fingers together, on both your hands and being aware of that sensation for 10 seconds, or looking at some object in front of you and just noticing all for 10 seconds, being totally present with it, noticing all the shape and the texture and the size and the gradations of the different colors and all of that. Just a state of awareness and awe and openness without any kind of judgment about it. Those 10-second mindfulness-based exercises, what we call PQ reps, really, really help to disengage the primitive brain responses and activate the prefrontal cortex area and allow you to get out of the past, get out of the future, and just be really in that present state. And what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, of just being self-aware and aware of your thoughts in that moment. And that can change everything. So I really like to teach people about the positive intelligence. There's a great New York Times best-selling book called Positive Intelligence. I bring people through a 6-week program where they learn the elements of the positive intelligence, the saboteurs, the sage, and the self-command through the PQ reps. And the outcomes after going through the 6-week program in terms of increased resilience or improved performance are really phenomenal.
That's fascinating. And like anything else, everything you're talking about is all one of my favorite words, practice. It's
exactly.
It's not, you don't go into hypnotherapy. Yeah. You don't go into hypnotherapy or any other, I was going to say practice again, and have it work overnight. It's a matter of creating those neural pathways and those emotional pathways to have it manifest as your new perception.
Right. Yeah. So strengthening the neural pathway bonds, the new ones that you're creating. Although again, with things like the left go belief elimination process, 30 to 40 minutes, something's changed permanently forever. One-time hypnosis session can immediately change something, and it just sticks. But the repetition element of, like you said, that practice or listening to the hypnosis audio, for a period of time helps to make it stickier, helps to improve the lasting effects, even though sometimes we can get some immediate impact from some of these different types of tools.
And like you said in the beginning, got to work out those muscles, make them stronger.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, I appreciate your time, your intention, and your knowledge today. I'm glad we can make this time. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And I appreciate your questions, really intelligent questions. And it's always fun to talk to a like-minded individual who gets excited about these types of things in the brain and mindfulness and just learning how to be a better human.
If that's not work, I don't know what is. You got to bring it every day. Nobody to blame but yourself. So Lisa Smith. Oh, and where can people find out about you? If you have one or several presences, I know you're at hypnocoachlisa.com, but you have a number of different places on the web. Where's the best place for people to find out and get in touch with you?
Well, the hypnocoachlisa.com website is good if people are interested, particularly in hypnosis and personal development. And then I work with salespeople, sales teams, corporate as well, bringing, resilience training, et cetera, in. So my main website is themindtrainingcenter.com. And in that website, that shares about all the different ways that I can work with people, and will direct them either to the hypnosis element, or will bring them to more of the sales, business training and corporate training.
Awesome.
That's a good way. Of course, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. So those are some of the other ways to find me. Of course, Lisa Smith is a very popular name. So you might need to do a search. People can do a Google search on me. I've got a lot of good stuff on Google. So Lisa Smith, hypnotherapist, will usually guide you to some of my different pages and ways of contacting me.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'm glad you brought that up about working with sales teams, because these quote unquote practical applications of wellness for people who may not be as interested in them really do have amazing real world practical applications. So it's cool that you're doing stuff like that. So, but Lisa Smith, thank you so much once again for being here. And I'll put all the
time went like that. That time flew. It was so much fun.
It's relative. It's relative,
Yeah, there you go. There we go.
If this was torture, you'd have thought we've been going for 3 hours, but it's only been 45 minutes. So,
it's been great. Thanks, Jay.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for being here, and good luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks to Lisa once again for her time, attention, and intention. I do encourage you to go check her out and give her a call if there's anything you think she can help you with, whether it's a corporate gig or a personal, interpersonal gig. She's got a lot to offer, so check her out at themindtrainingcenter.com. And as always, your feedback regarding the show is always welcome. You can email me directly at j@jsmack.com or through the show address, which is goodeyepodcast@gmail.com. Online at goodeyepodcast.com. Please do go like, share, subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. It's everywheres. So your engagement really helps. Liking this and leaving a review and clicking on that, all that stuff helps the podcast to grow and get more interesting guests so I can share their valuable information with you. Thanks very much once again. Until next time, thank you for your time, attention, and intention. This has been another edition of the Good Eye Podcast. I'm Jay Smack.